thank you again for joining me with House to House Bible Study. Today we'll be talking about 7 active cult behaviors you won't believe. After thinking about it, it's just one behavior with 6 different components. We're going to be discussing these components and how they work and how it develops this one behavior called control. Now, I've watched videos on YouTube and Facebook regarding people that was involved in cultic like systems and religious groups, relationships and different things of that nature. And what I want to do here is I want to give you a little bit about another perspective, a little bit about myself. Because most of the videos that I watch tells the story of people that are studying these activities or they were victims of this sort of system. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my role as a member as well as a leadership in a system that had cult-like tendencies. Now, I'm gonna start with my personal story. I'm not gonna get too deep into it. Just gonna tell you how I was involved and how I supported a lot of this. So, like I said, I've seen things on Facebook that people normally talk about how they were victims and how they left these systems. But as a member, I saw people get hurt, people leave, people destroyed. And for the most part, as a member, at least in my case, many of these things I thought was justified. Many of these people leaving I felt was justified and was deserving. So with that said, I wasn't bothered too much about it, mainly because again, I thought that some folks was getting what they deserve. And so being in that type of system as a member, you don't see anything wrong with the system. Like certain things are put in place, whether spoken or unspoken, and if you break those rules, then of course, then you deserve to get what you deserve. I spent many years as a member being in these systems. My heart was toward God as I would tell it, and I understood, that we was there to serve God and to please God. And as years went by, I became a leader, and I was a part of the ministry, and I helped the ministry. And I helped the people that was in leadership. I wasn't the pastor, but I helped in hurting people in different ways. I saw people leave while I was in ministry. I talked to those people after they had left to try to get a feel of why they left. Because when you're in this, you don't see what other people see. I tried to stop people from leaving because there's hope that maybe something would change, and you really don't see what they see, and what you do see, you kind of ignore it, and I'll get into that as well. So, people in these sort of systems are unaware of the abuse. These people that are in this leadership power, their heart is not to hurt people. They are just hoping to hold up a standard. And they want to live for God as they understand it to be. And most of these people are kind of tired of the hypocrisy, and they want to separate themselves from other people because when they look around, it seems that everyone is just compromising to the world system. And when we know that the Bible teaches to be separated. So for the most part, the people that are in these systems especially the leadership, just want to be different and just want to hold up the standard that they believe that God has called them to live. And they want to enforce that same thing, and they want to make sure that the same outside behavior and compromise that seeping into different churches don't bridge or their standards, right? They just don't want to compromise to the world. This is really the mind of those that are in power. They just want to hold up a standard of holiness and righteousness, and they have so much zeal to do this, and they're so ready, like, and willing to do whatever it takes to keep this compromise or this outside power influence to come into the church and begin to affect them. They become just like any other church. So that zeal that they have most of the time is not really mixed with the love of God. And the fear of compromising really bothers these people. And this is why the system becomes an abusive system, because they don't have the love, they don't have the fruit of the Spirit mixed with this zeal of not compromising to a point where they begin to actually abuse. Not for the most part, people I know, it wasn't because they just want to abuse people. It's just their love for the scriptures, the love for keeping a standard became so strong that it began to affect people in a negative way. So these controllers don't see themselves as bad people. They see themselves as doing the will of God. And this is we can find the same example in the book of the Acts of the Apostles with Saul, who was later named Paul. So Saul was of the Pharisees. He studied and he persecuted the church, and but what he was doing was actually in his heart the will of God, right? So these Christians was coming up, and they were growing in numbers, and so Saul pursued them, persecuted them, put them in jail, imprisoned them, because he felt that they were going against the will of God. All the while he was going against the will of God. And this is the mindset of people with a lot of zeal, but it's not mixed with the fruit of the Spirit. And that's what happens. That zeal carries them off into left field. So Paul goes on in Galatians and tells the story of his conversion and how he became a believer and how he understood by revelation. See, you can never understand the mind of these leaders or the mind of the members unless you are actually in that group. And the members that are in the group and the leaders that are in the group will never understand what you see from standing afar off until they're out of the group. And then you can look back in retrospect and go, man, that wasn't good. Like Paul, after his conversion, he could look back and say, I count all of that dung. That was worthless. All of that stuff that I did in the Jews' religion was not the will of God. But you can't see that when you're in. You only can see it once you get out and you look back, and then now you can actually see where you went wrong. And this is me. This is my story. I can see where I went wrong. I can see why things happen and why I'm no longer there, because God brought me out for the purpose of seeing, right? When you're in the system, you just think you're doing the will of God. And I can understand that mindset because I was there. So I'm telling you from standpoint of being a member and being a leader for years. All right. So we're going to go ahead and go into that, just giving you a little history, personal story, and where I'll be coming from and my perspective on it all. So we're going to start with first the Actionable Cultic Control. And this is the heart of what we're going to be talking about. The controlling system. It's unnatural, it's unhealthy, and it's often mistaken as this accountability system. right? However, this control is always seem to be steered downwardly and enforced on one way, and that's upon the members and the followers. The accountability rule does not apply to those that are in leadership circle. It doesn't apply completely. Like there are things that the leadership roles can get away with, that whether it's spoken or unspoken, that the regular members just are not allowed. And if you're in a system like this, you know exactly what I'm saying. And if you're not in a system, thank God that you're not in a system where you are, where this partiality exists. Like people that are on the hierarchy or that's in this leadership circle, whether it's the husband or whether it's a pastor and his wife and their children, seem to get away with things and able to do things that regular people in the congregation or in the group is not allowed. Right? And that happens all the time in these groups. The environment here allows leadership to fall short and fail, but when they do, it's often excused. Regular members and followers, when they fail and when they don't live up to the standard, they are perceived as rebellious, or they are picked out and they are made an example of. But when leadership does the same thing, whether it's in their family, whether it's a pastor or whether it's the pastor's wife or their children, when they fall into error, there's always an excuse why that happens. And sometimes they use excuses, sometimes that God is doing something special with them or something, or they use some other excuses, but they become untouchable because they represent God, and members can't confront them. This is a bad system to be in. It's not always deadly. You guys ever heard of Jim Jones? Jim Jones was this charismatic leader that was supported by many politicians, and he was looked at as a great man at one point, but ended up being a cultic leader who led many of his followers to commit suicide. And if you're not aware of this, just Google Jim Jones and read the story of Jim Jones massacre down in South America. Not to get off point here, just making a statement or making a point as well about how Jim Jones was this great leader, but he had so much control over his followers that they believed him to even go to the point of drinking poison Kool-Aid, and this is where the term comes from, drinking the Kool-Aid. So with that said, you might be drinking the Kool-Aid if you're involved in a controlling system such as Jim Jones. All right, so there are 7 components that I'm going to be talking about, but there's one center core of the discussion, which is the cultic control. These systems have this control over you, and the components that they use to build that control is something that happens over time. It's not something that happens immediately as you come into the group, but you'll find yourself slowly falling into it. It doesn't matter how strong. It doesn't matter how strong you are. It doesn't matter where you think you are with God. None of that really matters once you start falling into this system. I know people who were very strong. I consider myself as being a strong person spiritually as well, and because of the way everything is structured, it begins to break you down a little bit by little bit and piece by piece until it unravels you and you find yourself entangled into this system and actually participating in it and condoning it, like you're all in, and you'll understand why this is so as we go forward. So we're going to start with the very first one, and I'm going to try to see if I can get through this within the next 20 minutes, 25 minutes at the most. All right, so we're going to deal with befriend. So the befriending process and the cultic control normally happens to people who are going through a crisis. It could be a loss of a job or a loss of a loved one, financial crisis, a hardship, physical, mental, or health-wise crisis or something of that nature. You're new to the area. You could be a friend of a family member that actually go to the church. However, you can find yourself in these cultic control systems in the beginning. The people that you meet are really overly friendly, super over friendly. And what I mean by that is they shower you with gifts and they just want to love on you. They invite you to the house. They take you out to dinner. You know, if you need some sort of need, they'll help you financially. Like they just shower you, shower you. Now, this doesn't mean that this is a cultic controlling system just because they're doing this, because some people love you, just want to see you serve God and they don't have any agenda, or they they're not looking for anything in return. All right, so those are great, but when you should always be wondering where all of this is going. Like if someone is loving on you and it feels unnatural, you know, when we meet someone and new and we become friends later in the future, it's not because we sat down and thought about being friends. It's just something that happens. It's a chemistry. There's a bond, you know, unseen bond that just happened. So with these systems, sometimes people are just pouring out to you, but on the underlying is there is a reason why, right? So just have your senses open to know, okay, and ask where is this going and within yourself. Also, be careful when you're being asked a lot of questions, and I want to make this very clear. When people ask you questions, sometimes they do so with an agenda. All right, they invite you over and ask you all these questions, and you know they're getting into your personal life and your business. And this don't happen all in one day. This is something that, again, gradually happens over time. The more time you spend with this group, the more you'll start feeling open to pour out yourself to them. And questioning, when people ask you questions, remember the person, whoever's asking questions, the person asking the questions is the one that's in control. Some people think that they're in control because they spend all the time talking. The person that is talking is out of control. Why is that? Think about Oprah Winfrey, Dr. Phil, and you know different hosts of talk shows. When they bring somebody onto their show, like Wendy Williams or whatever, when they bring somebody on their show, they are asking all the questions. Why? Because they controlling the show. The person that's asking the question is controlling the show. The person that is doing all the talking is out of control. They're not controlling, right? So if you being asked a lot of questions, you need to be aware that the more information that you give that person, the more information can be used against you later. You know, if a person get arrested, they're going to be read their rights, and their rights is that you know you have the right to remain silent. That's one right, because anything that you say can and will be held against you in the court of law. The more you talk, the more ammo you give to other people to control your life or to manipulate you, if they're not upright with God, and if they have an agenda. So you need to be aware of that. Okay, so people ask you a lot of questions. Don't go into details about your life. All right, don't give out information, special personal information about your husband or your wife or your kids or your finances. Those things should be taken straight to God. Right? Not given to people, no matter who they are. Right? You just don't give your personal business to people, because that is not healthy. And if it happens, what's going to happen is you're going to be in a one-sided relationship. You've already given all your information out to people, but you know very little about them. They always talk to you about the surface stuff, but you get deep into your relationship by pouring out yourself. So now they know everything about you, and you know little about them. That is very dangerous. Save yourself some heartache and some pain. Don't talk to people about your business. You know, you may be going through a crisis. You may be going through a hardship. But you need to find someone that you can talk to that is not going to, control you. Mainly God. Mainly God. Pour it out to God. Don't pour all that out on people because they can't handle it. And I'm talking to you from a point of leadership. The next one is also isolation. Right? In these groups, they're going to remove you from the outside influences. And they want you to stay away from sinners, stay away from family members, anyone that doesn't go to the same church that you go to, or that's not a part of the group or part of the relationship. They want you to kind of refrain from them. And they'll start calling them different names. And, sinners and Philistines, Amorites. You'll get all kinds of names that they will call them, and to make you feel that you can't hang out with them or talk with them or fellowship with them. And the most critical thing about the isolation is when the church sees itself as the only ones right. All right, and when they have this mentality, they will not differ in the local church. There's no difference to them in the local church from the church of Jesus Christ, which is the universal church. Right? They see that they're the only ones right and that they're the church. And how do you know that this is happening? If anyone leaves, if they're declared not saved anymore, then this is an indicator that they see themselves as the only true church. If you're not allowed to go visit other congregations, then you are without some aid or someone going with you, or you getting approval or all that, then you are in a church which thinks that it is the only true church. And this can be dangerous. It sees itself as superior to other bodies, right? And they may be superior in doctrine. They may be superior in zeal. They may be superior in many ways, but they're not the superior church. They're not the only church that is alive and function in the body of Jesus Christ. But most of the time, these churches see themselves as being the only ones right. This is an unspoken rule. They don't say we're the only one right. They just say that we don't know where the truth is at other than this place. When you hear that, they're the only true church. They see themselves as special people with a special mission. The whole church, the church of the body of Jesus Christ, the universal church, is special and has a special mission. That is to reach the world. In these systems, most of the time, their special mission is to build more churches, right? Build bigger buildings, bring other people underneath them. When you're in that type of atmosphere, this is a red flag for you to see that you may be in a cultic control and isolation sort of deal here. All right, you're falling deeper and deeper into this system. Brainwashing. Right, during the crisis, hard times, you're removed from outside influences, and you need to find yourself around people that can support you. I get it, and that's understandable. When you're going through some tough times, you need support. But during these times, you have low self-esteem. When they start brainwashing you and they're there to support you and they're giving you these gifts, your self-esteem is low and you become really, really dependent on the group. All right. And you see yourselves as on a lower level than the people that are supporting you, like the ministry. You see them as superior to you. This is not good. All right. We honor our leadership. We honor them, even double honor for those that are working in the ministry. But we got to also understand that we're all servants of God, right? We can't all be eyes. We can't all be, the nose or the arms. We can't all, but we're all one body. We're all working together for one purpose, right? But when you start looking at your leadership as being this superior people, and we'll get in more detail of what I mean by that, you're going to start falling into error. All right? They give you a new way of thinking. When we're born again, we think differently, but this is not that. All right? You're going to start thinking just like everyone else. There's no critical thinking in this. It just got a group of people that amen, 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 everything, but no one is really thinking critically about the word of God. And even if you thought critically about what's going on and things that are happening, you get a lot of threats, and you get a lot of, if you come against the ministry, or in the sense of you begin to question some of the things that are happening, whether it has to do with the finances, whether it has to do with how things are being ran, whether it has to do with the partiality that you see, whatever it is that you see a weakness in the ministry, if you bring it up, you're in trouble. So they take away your senses to think. You become numb to thinking on your own. When you see things that that are not right with God, because you read the scriptures, if you're reading the scriptures, you can't really bring them up, because you're going to come under scrutiny, and hell's fires and all kinds of other things happen to you. So you can't think for yourself. You have to become an amen person. You amen everything. This is the brainwashing system. This is the mind control. They start telling you what you can think, telling you what you can say, tell you, what you have to stand up for, but without speaking it, they let you know you can't approach us. You can't approach me, that I'm untouchable. Without saying it, they say it. All right, and I'm gonna get more into that in some of these other ones. So you lose your identity, right? And these controlling systems, you lose your identity. Like you're not even your own man anymore. You're not even your own person, you're not your own woman. And, you lose your identity in this. You have to ask for permission for everything. You have to ask for permission to take a dump. You have to ask for permission if you want to go on vacation, if you want to start a business, if you want to do anything with your family outside of the church. You have to make sure that the ministry is okay with you doing it. But the ministry doesn't ask for your okay if they want to do something. They just do it, because no one's above them, right? You're beneath them. They're not going to confide in you and say, hey, this is what we want to do. What do y'all think? No, they just do whatever they want. You're the one who always got to come submit to them and ask them every single thing about your life. Because they know everything about your life. They know all about your finances. They know all the things, your struggles. They know everything that you know, because you've given them all that ammo. You've given them that power over your life. So they control you. You lose yourself completely as a person, as a man. You can't even make decisions as a man, can't make decisions for your own household. You have to consult with the ministry. And that's too much power. That's over your life. As a man of God, as a bishop of your own house, you should be able to make sound decisions. This is not to say that you can't get advice from the ministry. But you're the man. You're the ones God is going to hold accountable for the moves you make. While you want to make wise decisions, you want to be able to make those decisions as a man, and as a woman, and as a family. Right? You lose yourself completely. You ask permission for everything. You can't even go visit someone without asking. You can't even, you can do much of anything without first getting the approval of the ministry. And that's dangerous. That's mind control. And that's a loss of identity. Something that you really need to consider is when you start mimicking the leadership, when you want to dress like the leadership, when you want to act like them, you speak like them. When someone's having a conversation with you, they think that they're looking at your pastor. But you behave just like the leadership. You want your wife to be like the pastor's wife. You want the wife wants her husband to be like the pastor. And you're doing your best to raise your children just like they raise their children. This is This is bad. It's idolatry. Just like people in the world mimic the people that they worship, you can have a form of worship when it comes to your leadership. And if you're not careful, they would become your gods. You think you're worshiping the God of the Bible, but you're not. That's not the God that's in your heart. It's your pastor, it's your leadership. Because you mimic everything. You have lost your identity in these groups. You lost your identity. You lost the ability to think for yourself. Got to ask everything. You lost your ability to think critically, to make good judgments on your own, to try the spirit, to test the spirit. All that stuff is out the window. So now you're not even thinking for yourself. Now you're just mimicking everything that you see. And you're miserable. Why are you miserable? Because you're not your own person. And you can't live up to the standard that you see your leadership supposedly living up, even though they're not even living up to it. But behind closed doors, they're doing whatever they want to do. But when they come to church, they giving off this persona like they're living this great life. They have problems too. They have issues too. But you're trying to live up to that standard, and you can't. You're miserable. Your wife is miserable. Your kids miserable. You're miserable. The young people are miserable. The single people are miserable because everybody is trying to live up to a standard and trying to please, again, would be a better word to say, trying to please the people that you're associating with. And you're all miserable. You got to think like the group, and this makes you more dependent. Solely dependent. You can't see yourself not being away from these people. Not away from God. Not away, not away from God, not away from, you can't see yourself away from the spiritual body of Jesus Christ. You can't see yourself away from this local body of believers. This is dependency. That if God sent you somewhere else, you would crumble because you can't handle not being there on Sunday. I mean, you better be there on Sunday if you know what's good for you. But they got you away from your sinners. They got you away from your family. They got you away from everyone else. You come a part of this amen group, can't think. You're totally withdrawn and isolation is taking place. So now you have no identity. And no one to hit you and say, look, wake up. Is anyone that says, hey, look, wake up. Look, something's going wrong here. The closer you draw to the controlling system. All right, we're about 30 minutes into this. I'm going to see if I can try to wrap this up in the next 15 minutes at least. All right, so the next thing is the intimidation. In this system, you feel intimidated. They have these tattletales, I call, these whisperers, people who look for things that you're doing. They go back and they tell the pastor these little dominions or whatever you call them, like these little workers that go back and forth and tell the pastor, things that they see, and these whisperers are keeping up confusion, right? And when, let's just say for an example, if the wife woke up one day and she began to question everything, or if the husband woke up and he began to question everything that is going on, or many of the things that they see that is not lining up with the word, what happens is, if anyone hears of this and it gets back to the leadership, if for instance the wife goes and tell the pastor what her husband is thinking, or the husband goes and tell, vice versa, then that person that is second guessing or beginning to think critically, beginning to really examine the word over the things that they see happening in the group, this person comes under scrutiny. This person that comes under threats and disfellowship, shunning, hell's fire, and so on. They'll preach over the pulpit this mic power that they have to intimidate you, to pull rank, right? And to make you an example out of so everyone else could see. They'll often use your past and like, look, all this stuff we've done for you, and this is how you treat us. This is manipulation at its best. Whenever someone plays a victim and they flip the script on you, like they remind you of everything they've done, this means they never done it with a pure heart. They always, whenever they do something for you, they were doing it because they wanted to be able to use it against you later. When you do great things for people that's honest and that's pure, they're never going to remind you of it because you already know. But when they flip it and say, or they tell other people, I did all these things for them, or I did all this for them, or I did that for them, and this is how they treat us, that's manipulation. That's them playing the victim. They're saying, overlook all the bad stuff I did and look at the good stuff I did. Don't judge my bad stuff, just look at all the good stuff. Because I helped you. That's wrong. So if I come to you and ask you a question about something I saw you did wrong, oh, you're going to do that to me? You're going to judge me like that? What about all the stuff I've done for you? That's wrong. If I saw you do something wrong and I come to you, you can't flip it back on me. You're supposed to answer the question. You're supposed to deal with what I'm bringing to you. That's wrong. And that happens in ministry. All right? That happens in these sort of controlling systems. Beware of this behavior. And then the last thing we're going to deal with is fear. If you're in these systems and you're in fear of speaking out, you're in fear of staying or leaving, you're in fear of this hellfire threats and prophecies and stuff that come forth over your life, your fear of dying, you have this anxiety all the time. See, this is not the love of God, and this is not the atmosphere in God wants you to be in. Right? The fearful and the unbelieving, they're not going to heaven. You're full of this anxiety and this fear and this doubt, and that have this power over your family and over your personal life and over you. This is not the will of God. God has not given us the spirit of fear. So if you have this anxiety and this fear, where's it coming from? Because it's not coming from God. This is not a reverence of the ministry. No, because you don't supposed to have that type of fear for ministry. There's a respect for ministry. There's not a fear as if you're going to die. That's not healthy. That's not spiritually healthy. And if you're in those sort of environments, I'm telling you that it's not healthy for you. And in the end, it's going to lead to abuse. You're already abused. If you under those sort of controlling systems, you're already being abused. If you can't speak out, you don't have a voice, you can't judge things properly, you're already in a controlling system. If you're mimicking your pastor and the wife and the children, then you're already in a controlling system. and you're being abused. It's simple as that. If anyone leaves their congregation and all they say is how awful they were, and all they think every time that someone leaves, they talk down on them, this is a strong indicator that you're in a controlled system. That nobody can leave without them being lost, or troublemakers, or sinners, or these evil people. And if you're there, you believe them. You believe what they say, and this put more fear in you to leave. Like you're afraid to leave, because leaving actually would say that there's some things that are wrong, and you don't want to admit that, because now you have to deal with the fact that you've been deceived. And to keep yourself from being deceived or being controlled, you stay. So to keep yourself from saying, okay, this is a controlling system and this is not right, you stay in the system because you're afraid of being wrong. You're being controlled. This is called mind control. It's brainwashing. If you approach your pastor and he pulls rank, if you approach the pastor's wife and she pulls rank, she turn it around on you, and you leave the conversation in more fear than you did when you went to her or him, this is mind control. I can't believe that you have this in your heart all this time. I can't believe you're coming with me this. I thought you trusted me. I thought you believed in us. I invite you over to my house. You visit my kids. And now you do this to me? That's mind control. That's manipulation at its best. Wake up. I know how hard it is. I've been there, done that. And when you're in it, you can't see it. When you're in it, you won't see it. You refuse to see it. But if you take a moment, take a step back, and engage the scriptures, you can clearly see it. But as long as you're in that fear, you won't be able to see it. As long as you're in that system, you won't be able to see it. You're going to justify it. You're going to pull scriptures even out of context, and you're going to use them to satisfy your own fears. Everyone who leaves them is not wrong. They had a reason why they left. And here's another indicator. If they don't want you talking to people who left, that's a strong indicator. If they want you to stay away from people that left, they don't want you talking to them. And if you do talk to them, all of a sudden you become a bad person and a bad seed. If you hang out with people that don't go to your congregation anymore, you get in trouble, so you stay away from them. That's a strong indicator that you are being brainwashed and controlled. Again, you have to ask for permission to do it. I can't do anything without the ministry. I thought it was God. I thought we couldn't do anything without God. I thought God was our center. But now the ministry have taken the place of God. Now the leadership have taken the place of God. I thought we were supposed to be the image of God, that God made us in his image, but you walking in the image of the ministry? Or some church leader? This is mind control. This is controlling you. Maybe, just maybe, somebody out there in one of these groups will hear this voice of this man who was once there as a member and as a leader, who participated in it, but but now is no longer a part of the system that's able to say, you're being controlled. Maybe that person out there will listen. Maybe, perhaps, they will begin to examine and think for themselves. And run for your lives. Free yourselves from this. It's not healthy, it's not good for you, and it's not going to end well for you. All right? Either before the Lord comes or after him. After he comes, it's not going to end well for you, because you have replaced him with the system. So let's get it right. That's going to be the conclusion of this talk. I hope you learned something. And I hope that if you find yourself in these systems, you find your way out of it as well. The scriptures clearly teaches that the ministry should not become lords over God's heritage, his people. You belong to God. You don't belong to the ministry. They've been given to us as a gift. The pastor is a gift to the church. The apostle is a gift to the church. They're not lords over the church. There are gifts. These people in ministry is a gift to you. And they're supposed to help guide you into the light of God. They're supposed to help give you knowledge of the Son of God. Bring us all into perfection according to Ephesians. And into the knowledge of the Son. But they're not lords. They're not gods. They're not your idols. Remove that idol from your heart. See that you have replaced the true and living God with ministry or this group of people. All right. I probably can go on and on and on, but I'm going to go ahead and end this here. God bless.